All right, let's break down the Declaration of Independence, written mostly by Thomas Jefferson. So we have the title and the date. It's the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America in the Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776. We have a preamble. In other words, why the Declaration is why the Declaration is necessary. Well, it basically goes back to Locke and Thomas Paine's common sense, that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the bands that have been connecting them together and create a new one. Part 2, we have a statement of beliefs. What we believe as Americans. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That is that's the social contract that we come up with, that we come together and we decide this is how we're going to have our government based on our beliefs. Furthermore, we believe that sometimes there have to be a change in government, because while evils are sufferable to the rights themselves by abolishing the forms in which they are accustomed, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, our right, our duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for our future security. Okay? Then they go into the key assertion that needs to be proven, the establishment of tyranny. So, the reason why we're doing this is because the King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, having all direct object that establish an absolute tyranny over us. Now, what is the evidence? Here are the evidence. We've got quite a few in here. For instance, he has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasion on the rights of people. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Remember, those are similar to the National Guard that we have today. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. That was the Boston Harbor Port Act. For depriving us, in many cases, of benefits of trial by jury. A lot of times there would be what is called a bench case or bench trial, where the judge hears the case and the judge alone comes up with the indictment or not indictment, and then the punishment. Okay, for transporting us beyond the seas to be tried for pretended offenses. That was another part of the Townshend Acts that they did not like. And then finally, the appeals to our British brethren have failed. We have tried to get help from our British kin back in Britain. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. In other words, remember, there was a push to have people from Britain come to North America and settle for the good of Great Britain, for the good of North America. So we read those primary sources. Don't forget about those. And then a statement of independence and its justification. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, and here's what we're called now, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world, God, for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, the United States of America have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And then here is the oath of support. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And then at the bottom of that is where we see all those names. So if you go to the Constitution of the United States and Other Patriotic Documents by Greg Jarrett, that was one of our required books. And if you look on page 50, you see the beginning of the Declaration of Independence. So you can read that again on your own. It is a good idea to know what the Declaration of Independence actually says and who the author was. So again, Thomas Jefferson was mostly the author of the Declaration of Independence, and what his ideas or what his interpretation of the Enlightenment are easily seen in the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so let's see. Now we're going to go to the Treaty of 1783. The Definitive Treaty of Peace, or also known as the Treaty of Paris, can be found in Jarrett, page 71, if you want to read along with me. But what it is it's the ending of the war between the United States and Britain. And basically what it says is that we forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship which we, United States and Britain, mutually wish to restore, and to establish such a beneficial and satisfactory intercourse between the two countries upon the ground of reciprocal advantages and mutual convenience as may promote and secure to both perpetual harmony and peace and harmony. So that's basically what that is. And then we have a bunch of people who sign, and then we have articles that basically state where the boundaries are, what the states are. If there are any disputes that arise in the future, we have something that we can agree upon, some sort of arbitrary committee, and that we are not going to bother Great Britain, and that Great Britain is no longer going to bother us, and that everything that all the rights and restitution of estates and properties are going to be given back to those that they were confiscated from during the war, except for those who were loyalists, that there should be no future confiscations made, nor any prosecution commenced against any person that may have taken part in the war. In other words, it doesn't matter which side you're on. Everybody is immune. We hope that those of you who were not patriots, though, leave. Go to Britain. Okay? Other things, for instance, the navigation of the river Mississippi from its source to the ocean are open and free to the subjects of Great Britain and the United States. And then we have an alliance here, so that if any place or territory belongs to Great Britain or the United States have been conquered from another, then we will come to each other's aid. And here are the people who signed it. John Jay, of course, who's going to become the first Attorney General, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, who's going to become a president, and Hartley. All right. So you can read that in Jarrett with all the articles. And now, all right, what are we going to do? We have, oh, wait, before we do this, we also need to take a look at some people who were against. Not everybody was for the war. Okay, so we're going to talk about somebody who wasn't. So here's a map of the United States after the Treaty of Paris that we just read of 1783. So this is what the United States looks like. All of this up here is Canada, and it dips down pretty low. Up here we're going to have Maine. This is going to become Nova Scotia. So right here is where the United States ends, okay? And it goes all the way down here We have this is going to be called the Northwest Ordinance. It's a big deal that's going to be happening fairly soon in American history. And then, of course, this is the United States of America, the 13 colonies. All right, so there's that. You have this as one of your resources. It's one of your worksheets. You can take a look at that if you wish. Alrighty, now, other things that I've got for you to take a look at if you wish are the causes of the American Revolution chart. This is a fantastic chart that I've created for you. Starts in 1754 with the French Indian War. Has a description, has the effect on the colonies both economically, politically, and socially, has an effect on England, economic, politically, and socially, and how it led to the American Revolution. We got the Proclamation of 1763, which was supposed to have protected Indians and settlers, but it did neither. We have the Sugar Act, which was used to pay for the French Indian War. Stamp Act, Quartering Act, Declaratory Act, Towns and Duties, Boston Massacre, the Tea Act, the Boston Tea Party, the Coercive/Intolerable Acts, and then the First Continental Congress and how it dissolved because the independent states could not get along. They couldn't make a decision. Now, know that the battles of Lexington and Concord are really the beginning of the War for Independence. I think you've heard about the shot that was heard around the world. Don't know who shot who first, but it did start a skirmish. And this is also the time of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, which may or may not have been done by him. And so you can read how it affected the entrance into war. And also because of what was going on at Lexington and Concord, they were hiding ammunition. That's where we get also the Second Amendment. Okay, then we get the Second Continental Congress, and you can read what happens in 1775. It was basically in order to create an army, have George Washington at the head of it, and begin war. Okay, then we have the publication of Common Sense, and then finally the Declaration. All right, so that is right here under More Worksheets and Handouts. Let's see what else might be good to use. We did the Anatomy of the American Revolution worksheet. We've looked at the Treaty of Paris, and now we're going to go into Foner, and we're going to read what Samuel Seabury's Argument Against Independence. We're not going to have much time in this lecture to do that, but I want you to be able to answer the questions that are on page 1112. Why does Seabury believe the Continental Congress and local committees are undermining Americans' liberties? Got to define liberties. Number 2, how does Seabury differ from advocates of independence in his understanding of freedom? Again, what is freedom? Okay, that's why you had that assignment. So make sure that you understand those questions. You don't have to turn anything in, but it might be a good idea to know about them for future exams. All right, so that's all for this lecture. I'll see you in the next.